Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, Jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the shadow of the Great Blue Hills in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids, principals, teachers, a librarian. Let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have two wonderful guests for you today. First up, Jayme Branaghand will be here to celebrate Squirrel's four-square solution. And later in the show, Farial English will be here to celebrate Charlie and Sophie's great escape. Are you looking for the perfect gift for a young reader? Woofy and the Dinosaur Dig Adventure, the second book in the Woofy series, is an exciting choice that fosters creativity, friendship, and teamwork. Join Woofy, a small gray stuffed dog, on his thrilling quest to help his friends excavate a T-Rex in the mountains. Young readers will enjoy his humorous adventures and admire his skills as a pup paleontologist, all set in a beautifully illustrated lyrical story. Authored by Helen Rogenson, retired award-winning teacher honored with the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching. This book encourages lifelong learning while supporting charities for animal rescues and children in need. Don't miss out. Visit us at unpackyourownhappy.com and connect with us on Instagram at unpackyourownhappy. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Snoodles in Space, Episode 2, The Zoodles Strike Back, written by Stephen Joseph and illustrated by Andy Case. In this third installment of the Snoodles series, the Zoodles are determined to have their revenge. With the help of a grimy millionaire who's fallen on hard times, they intend to poison the Earth's water supply and turn everyone into willy-nillys and dilly-dallies. Can Brianna and Ricky save the Earth again? Will the outcast kids on the other side of the track rise to the challenge and help save the world? You can find out with Snoodles in Space, Episode 2, The Zoodles Strike Back. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by the books by Jayme Perry Knights. Jayme is a TEDx speaker, award-winning facilitator, world traveler, and author. Serving military families through quality literature is her goal and her passion. Her books are absolutely amazing. They are just full of great messages. Books like I'll Find My Way, and That's Okay. I Move a Lot, and That's Okay. And It's Cool to Be Kind. Such great books that you and your kids will absolutely adore. These books deserve to be in your family library. Get them today. The books by Jayme Perry Knights. They're available today at Amazon. Join us right now from Washington State. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new children's book. It's called Squirrel's Four-Square Solution. Please welcome to the show, Jayme Branaghand. Hey, Jayme, how are you?
I am great. This afternoon is a very dreary Washington day, but I'm used to it.
Aren't they all?
Yeah, we've had a great summer, but so we are definitely not in summer. It's fall, almost winter. So, yep.
Right. Well, you know, I was just telling Jayme that my beautiful wife and I just returned from a trip to Ireland and Scotland, and leading up to the trip, everybody we spoke to, whether they were residents or the travel agency, they all said, you gotta get ready for rain. It's gonna rain all the time. You gotta bring galoshes and boots and 8 raincoats and an umbrella and everything. And it actually only rained one night when we were in the town of Killarney, and it was just a light mist, but otherwise we had clear skies.
We went last summer and had the same exact experience. We only had one day in Liverpool that rained. Other than that, it was beautiful.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Squirrel wasn't in Ireland or London or Liverpool. Tell us about Squirrel and what was his solution?
Yes. So Squirrel is an elementary aged student. And he's actually one of 4 characters that I feature in my first book. So my first book is We Will Join You. And it first introduces several characters, and Squirrel is one of them. So the idea behind my first book was really introducing some characters with neurodivergent symptoms and things that, it's not perfectly recognized, but kids and teachers and educators and parents will recognize the behaviors and some of the things they were saying. So the first book just kind of introduced all these characters and the school itself.
What is it about Squirrel that makes him different than his peers?
So Squirrel is very intelligent, very smart, but also very particular. He likes things to always be the same routine. He likes doing the things the same way. He doesn't get while they have a separate Friday day that's super fun for free roaming around. He doesn't quite get that. Squirrel is also, as you would imagine a squirrel to be, very energetic, ready to go, all over the place, doesn't really think before he acts, but he's also pretty remorseful when that happens.
Interesting. As you're talking, I've had conversations with folks, people my age, which is like almost 100, who, will sit down and say, back in my day, that was just a boy. There was just a kid who was different, just a kid who was particular, and there was no labels, no diagnosis. What would you say to that person?
And, to be honest, my books, I don't particularly apply the label, but I also want to recognize that there are specific things that will support these kiddos and people, adults in general, better when we know more about why these behaviors are happening. So it might not be a typical behavior of a kiddo when you put them all together. And there are ways, like I said, to support them better when we recognize, okay, this is actually because this kiddo has ADHD. So Squirrel is definitely on the ADHD realm. And so in the book, the solution really is teaching him to regulate some of these emotions and identify when he's really angry and upset. There's ways to calm down so he can join in Foursquare, which is, most people know Foursquare, that recess game where you're passing the ball in the different fours. And he has a really hard time because there's rules, there's lines, there's waiting. And kiddos with ADHD, that's a big struggle, and their emotions get really big. And so that, I would say, is, yeah, maybe it's typical, but we now know better that there's things to help these kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm happy that you're talking about a kid or a character with ADHD, and you're talking about teaching that character skills to help them regulate their behavior. And we're not talking about pills. Right.
No, there's no, and my background is I'm an elementary school counselor. I've been an elementary school counselor this is my 23rd year. And I'm moving toward my private practice as a child therapist. But in that, really, the thing that's working so great is these kids identifying their strengths. I really believe in the idea of find the strengths and then how we work with those to regulate, like we said, some of the emotions. And ADHD, there's so many great tools for these kids, but it is kind of specific. There is some things that you really do have to focus on to help them.
Now, as a counselor working in schools, are you actually given the time and the resources to help these kids learn these different skills and behaviors?
Yeah, that I will say is the most frustrating. When I started, my school was 400 kids. And so I definitely could really focus on kids. The same school, I've been at the same school, I'm very lucky, is now, we're almost at 700 kids. Yeah. And it really, you can teach them, I want to say teaching to a whole class and giving the whole class like some of these skills, because it works for everybody, right? Understanding when you're angry and how to calm down before you're talking to somebody. Those skills work for everybody, for teachers, for adults. But when it starts getting to very specific, the kid has tried that before. They know how to do that. Then there's a little bit more. That's where I see my private practice. I'm finding like it's making such a difference. Like I'm finding a lot of power in that relationship. And to be honest, the biggest difference is I'm able to work with parents. Mm-hmm. So in schools, you can work with parents, but it's just not the same access as now I can work with a parent and coach them through the behaviors at home. Parents are super invested. They want the strategies. They're ready to try things. And so when the two of us are doing it, you can see the changes and you can see the behaviors morph into more positive things, them getting what they need, not having so many tantrums, those kind of things.
We're very familiar with the alternative treatment, if you will. I don't think that's the right word, but it's training, I think might be better. And it does take a huge commitment from the family, not only the student or the person dealing with the extra energy, as I like to say, but it takes a huge commitment. And I've been guilty of saying and putting all the blame on the schools. It's like, oh, they're so quick to suggest medication and pop a pill, but I think for a lot of parents it's the same. It's like, boy, I can just give this kid a pill, or I can work for an hour every night with this kid. And do I really want to do that? Well, the answer should be yes, you want to do that.
But they're exhausted. The parents that I'm like working, now that they've reached out to a therapist, it's because their school has said you might want to seek therapy. It's because they're exhausted. And I do have a great empathy for them. I'm a parent myself with a neurodivergent kiddo. So I understand that the work starts and it keeps going. Like it's not a quick thing. Like you said, the pill's not going to go in and metabolize and work. It's this constant work as a parent and adjustment, like something will work and then it changes. The kids get older and things change, or their interaction with peer changes, so it is a lot more work, but it's very possible. And I feel like once you start that groundwork and start some of those suggestions and strategies, it can be really exponential. So you'll see it and it will start just building upon each other.
You just mentioned something that I find interesting. You were mentioning kids change, they grow, but also relationships change. Can a kid who's not able to build good, healthy friendships or relationships, or is in a new school setting and is having trouble making friends, could that exacerbate the neurodivergent behaviors?
For sure. And it's kind of like a circle, right? It's the chicken egg kind of situation. Which one's creating it to be more difficult? But definitely they feed off each other. So it's probably more difficult for them anyway, because they don't have some of those social skills. It doesn't come naturally. But then when they don't get practice to even be socially engaged, it just gets worse, right? They need to practice. They need some of those tips and tricks to get in there at least. So they're not excluded, because often what happens is they're excluded because either they look angry, they look like they're trying to break rules. They sometimes look like that naughty kid or the kid that doesn't care. That was the We Will Join You book was really about kids that are not inviting you to play. Doesn't mean they don't want to play. That's not how they engage with others. And so the kids in the book learn to join them at whatever they're doing. Instead of, we always teach kids, ask them to play. Well, neurodivergent kids are probably not going to do that. Or if they do, they're going to say it in a way that kids are like, I don't think they do want to play with me. They said it differently and they ran away. So that can't be. So I do think it's a cycle, to answer your question. It's just interjecting where we can interject into where they're at, meeting them right where they are.
Yeah. Now, I know it's not fair because every kid is different, but we'll take the example of a kid with extra energy, which I think a lot of families are dealing with. What are some of the medication tips that and skills that families might want to investigate before they go the route of medication?
I'm such a huge proponent of the schedule, of making a schedule. And sometimes parents are like, well, we have a schedule. And I said, yeah, but is it posted? Are you guys all talking about the schedule? Can your kiddos see it? And it's really because that predictability. It's predictability and the expectations. I also tell families, make family rules, because really, even though you said like 50 times, we don't throw our clothes on the floor. We put them in the hamper, or whatever your family rules are. We don't eat with our mouth open, or we clear the table. Write it out, because again, their brain is not connecting it. Maybe audio, that's not their intake. And so write it out, all agree. And once you have that kind of that routine, it really will build. And again, it's hard. I get with parents, they're like, I'm working. I can't now type up a schedule, and I can't. But I always promise them, if you put that work at the beginning, it really will pay off. And then we can adjust as we go, but it will pay off.
Yeah. I'm delighted that you're able to spend more time working with families. We had some experience, and my son was very interested in working and kind of learning how to regulate his extra energy. And we're in talking with a nutritionist, and he was there, right there with everybody engaged. And then at some point, he just lost it. And he went from being engaged and sitting up in his seat to lying all over the seat and this and that. And I don't know what it was, if it was divine intervention, but I just turned to him and I said, dude, are you hungry? Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm suddenly starving. And the nutrition is like, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
And it was a big thing. It was like, we were able to go back to the school and say, listen, he is going to have a snack at such and such a time. Well, we don't allow snacks. Well, you do now, because that's what he needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing where these kiddos in that schedule, adding snacks, and then adding routines for him to access snack, right? Like, how can he do it? Does he have to ask you every time, or is there a cupboard he can go to? And then sensory exercises, put that in the schedule, put the trampoline, put the things in there. Even if you're like, but he's doing fine. He's just sitting there engaged. Well, don't forget, he's going to hit a limit. And so put that in the schedule. So that's another thing. Don't let kids miss recess because of behavior, right? Don't let them miss things because of it. Just build it into a schedule with the expectations of what you need them to do. So they would know, like your son, for instance, would be like, we have 5 more minutes and then we're done and we're walking up. You know what I mean? Giving them some ideas of cues. Mm-hmm. Parents do it all the time, but even really strict schedule can help. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you have been working with kids in a school setting for 23 or 25 years?
23.
23. Well, first off, thank you. Thank you for your service, because just as, our first responders and military personnel are serving our country, our communities, certainly teachers and counselors are right there on the front lines as well. Have you noticed, and we've seen the statistics change, that there are more kids that are dealing with neurodiversity? And are you thinking that we're just catching it better, or that there actually are more kids? Because I've heard a statistic that it's 1 in 34 or 1 in 24 boys falls on some sort of autism spectrum or neurodivergent spectrum. I think
there's a few factors. One is we are catching it, right? Mm-hmm. And the general population is becoming more aware of what that looks like, right? Before, we didn't know what we were looking for, so nobody noticed. The other is, I think parents are, there's more resources, not for everybody. It's definitely not equal. But there's more resources for neurodivergent. And so then people reach out to that, and then it becomes bigger because more people are utilizing that. So I think it's a combination. I think educators have always had that intuition. Like, they're like, I know this kid has ADHD, and we really couldn't talk about it before, but now I feel like it's more accepted too. It's not such a terrible label to say you're neurodivergent. It just is what you are. So I think that becoming more accepted, people are more willing to have those conversations with parents, with teachers, with community members. So just, I think the acceptance of it as well.
Well, I think a book like Squirrel's Four-Square Solution is obviously it's a wonderful tool and resource for a family that has a kid who falls on a spectrum to have in their home. But I also think it's equally important and a great resource for a kid and for families who aren't necessarily dealing with it directly. But I think it would be a great help to help kids who aren't dealing with these challenges develop empathy for their classmates.
Absolutely. And I will say I've done some different class readings, and I'm always amazed that the kids at first don't, they're like, oh, that Squirrel, why is he so naughty? And by the end, they are going, oh, I'm so glad he got to play and he got to join it. Like, they get it, right? So I think you're right. I think it's I hope everybody gets something out of it and notices the strengths that Squirrel has in other kids that are a little wild, a little extra energy, a little ready to go, but that you can, play with them and enjoy them. They're great humans or squirrels, as it may be.
Yeah. Now, you're mentioning you're a counselor in school. You have a private practice. You are a parent of a child who is neurodivergent. So it makes perfect sense that at some point you would say, well, I got lots of time on my hands. Why don't I write children's books?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the first one came really out of a need because I was in a school and we were starting a full inclusion model. And so every kid could come to our school. And wouldn't you know, I'm sure you're going to be absolutely surprised that the resources did not come with it. And so we didn't know how, and I was looking and looking and looking for books for kids who weren't neurodivergent to accept and learn how to play with these other kids. And I couldn't find a darn thing for elementary school. And so that's where that book came from. It's like, we need something to tell kids it's okay, and this is what's happening, and this is why this one kid's sitting over here, and hopefully a fun and engaging. I have a really great illustrator, and I think the kids are really engaged with that book. But that's where it came from, really a need to do it, and then it just kept going.
Yeah. So you mentioned that your school follows the inclusion model. Can you just talk a little bit about that, and what are some of the challenges and successes that your school has experienced?
Yeah, sure. So our school is we have a principal and administration team that loves to be the pilot school, which is sometimes great, and sometimes you're like, really, we're going to start a new thing again? So we were one of the first schools where every child that was in our attendance area, like our school boundary, would then come to our school. Previous to that, if you we called them at the time complex learners. So if you had like a physical disability, or you were on the spectrum in your communication, maybe you weren't verbal, or some of the higher needs would have a special school that they would go to in our district to get smaller class size. And so the idea was everyone's going to be included. We're all going to be in one spot. The resources will be there. And so they just started them. Well, yes, it's exciting for kids to be with these kids. It's also exciting for neurodivergent and very complex. These are kids with very complex needs are included, and their parents are part of our community. Like, I absolutely 100% think those parents should feel more included as well. The issue was teachers didn't have the training. We don't have just the physical needs of a school, the physical bathrooms, we have an elevator, but not all the kids can ride the elevator. And just the transition that these kids really needed. If I was going to be on some kind of board and explain it, I would have made the school district do like a year of walking through the school, having parents come to this without the kids and just say, this is not going to work. They need this kind of table. They need this kind of space. And training the other kiddos, hey, we're going to have some new students. Here's what it might look like. Let's meet some of them. Let's learn how to play with some of them. So we're in the third year of it at our school, and it's definitely better. But I will say they've had to actually pull it back a bit. They realize some of these kids really do need one person to give them instruction. And so they've pulled it back just a bit. They're still at school with us, and they're still very much a part of our community. But they do need more resources.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've shared this before. Back in 1987, before we heard the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, I was looking to figure out a way to make a living on stage, and a school for kids with severe developmental disabilities hired me to run their inclusion program. And I think they hired me because I wanted to be a professional clown. And they thought, this is not a good idea for our specialized school in a hospital. Let's hire this clown and let the program fail. Prove that you need this hospital that costs an outrageous amount of money. It didn't fail, despite my my lack of knowledge. But I think it was my lack of knowledge that was really helpful, because I didn't have what all those special needs teachers and therapists and doctors and nurses had, which was all this training that said, these kids can't. These kids can't do this, they can't do that, they can't do that. All these barriers to get the kids in the community. And I just saw them as kids and was like, okay, you have a wheelchair? Well, this is how we'll deal with that. And the program was incredibly successful. And that school closed 2 years after we started it. But it was good because the kids were all integrated back into their community schools. We had kids being transported 90 to 120 minutes each way to get to a specialized school. And then after the year of this program, they were back and they were riding the school bus with an aide and their neighbors. And so it was a very successful experience. And I love telling that story just because it was like one of those, this shouldn't work, but it did. And it did mainly because the kids the quote unquote typical kids that we brought our kids to were so open and willing to love and be friends.
Yes. And I will say our teachers, not one of them were like, I can't do this. I can't have this kid on my class. I don't know what to do. They all jumped in and they all are super caring. And now they have a little bit more skills on how to include them in the classroom. So it's more seamless. It's not as clunky as it was at the beginning.
Isn't it amazing? Now, that story, I was hired in 1987. In 1989 or 90, they passed the American with Disabilities Act. And here we are. I don't want to do the math.
Yeah, please don't.
A lot of years later.
Yeah.
And we're still talking about situations where a school will go, yeah, let's do that. But, boy, we didn't think this through. We don't have all the resources we need.
I know. And I get that it's all the best intentions, right? It's like, we want to do this for everybody. And that is yes, I agree. 100%. Let's do it. But hold on, because don't forget, like you said, those frontline workers, they really do need some support to make this successful. And so I think that was kind of the last thought, unfortunately. And if it would have been equal thought, I think it would have been successful from the beginning.
Right. Yeah. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Squirrel's Foursquare solution, your other books, and also find out more about you.
Yes, absolutely. So they can visit my website, which is nice and easy. It's jaymebranagh.com. My books are on there, a little bio, some events that I go to, and different events that I will be going to and joining in. They can see that. I'm on Instagram at Jayme Branaghand Writes. Yeah, I'm also on Amazon and Barnes & Noble if people like to get their books there.
Wonderful. Now, if there's a family listening to this and hearing that you're a counselor and you're doing private practice, if they're looking to work with you, are they able to work with you if they're not in Washington State? Is this something that you can, help them over Zoom or electronics?
That's a super great question. So if we are going to do a therapeutic relationship where I am doing some of that parent coaching and therapy, I'm licensed in Washington and Oregon. So if they're in those two states, yes. If they want to get a hold of me and they just I'm happy to just chat and talk and brainstorm, then that's easy. That's not really a therapeutic relationship. So that would be very easy.
We had a wonderful time speaking to the author of Squirrel's Foursquare Solution. Our guest has been Jayme Branaghand. Jayme, thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for talking about this topic with me. I could talk for days.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by 28 Days of Neon by Mayra Rosenberg. 12-year-old Neon Blue Green is queen of the cafeteria, co-captain of the cheerleading squad, and has the most amazing dog any 7th grader could ask for. Her only complaint in life is that her parents named her after the color of a sports energy drink. Until the morning she overhears them whispering and learns that she has only 28 days left to live. Neon needs a miracle, but how can she get one in only 28 days? Then it hits her. She'll do one good deed every day. This is a fascinating middle grade novel that you and your kids are going to love to read or co-read together. Get your copy today, 28 Days of Neon by Mayra Rosenberg. This episode is brought to you by Feliz Navidad. It's December of 2019, and Pittsburgh is covered in a terrible fog. Even worse, all of the reindeer get sick and they can't fly. Everyone in the North Pole is worried they'll have to cancel Christmas. But just when all hope seems lost, Santa's pet, Feliz Navidad, raises his paw to help. And while a dog is not quite a reindeer, Feliz is their last chance to save Christmas. This is a book about perseverance and grit. Feliz Navidad, the story of how Santa's dog saved Christmas. Get your copy today, Feliz Navidad, by Ari and Rhea Helper. This episode is brought to you by OnceUponADance.com. Take storytelling to a whole new level. With Once Upon a Dance, your child will do more than just listen. They'll move, imagine, and connect. It's a literary adventure and a performance all in one. From graceful turns to energetic leaps, each story brings an immersive experience that engages both body and mind. Whether your child enjoys unicorns, bats, zombies, or cats, Once Upon a Dance has a Dance It Out story just for them. Celebrate joyful movement and visit OnceUponADance.com or find them at your favorite social media platform. This episode is brought to you by the Logan series. 3 wonderful books written by Christine Ritchie McNamee. Logan and the Missing Masterpiece, Logan and the Lost Luggage, Logan and the Missing Jewels. Logan and the Lost Luggage is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read, and all 3 of these books feature Logan, an adorable Cocker Spaniel who travels the world with his magic phone. You and your kids are going to love traveling around the world with Logan, meeting animals from all over the world, visiting different countries, and learning how to get along with people from other countries and other cultures. It's a beautiful series of books. Our Reading with Your Kids certified great read panel loved Logan and the Last Luggage. We know you're going to love all 3 books. Check it out today. The Logan series by Christine Ritchie McNamee. I am very excited. We have a debut author celebrating her new book. It's called Charlie and Sophie's Great Escape. Please welcome to the show, Farial English. Hey, Farial, how are you?
Oh, I am fine. I'm doing well. Thank you. Excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on. Farial, you're not able to see, but through the magic of technology and Zoom, I am looking into Farial's home, and it's such a lovely home, and she has such a really wonderful and happy smile, and it's obvious that she is really happy and proud that Charlie and Sophie's Great Escape is out into the world.
Yes, definitely. It was meant to be, so I'm glad it's out of my head and on paper.
Isn't that interesting? Sometimes you have this idea and you can't think of anything else about that idea until you get out into the world, and then it's out there and it's like, whew, finally, it's somebody else's problem now.
No, it's still my problem. But I hope it'll make other people smile when they read it.
Well, I'm sure it will, because it's just looking at the cover art and speaking to you is making me smile. Tell us all about Charlie and Sophie and what's going on with their great escape.
Well, so we adopted Charlie and Sophie as puppies from a border collie rescue in upstate New York, because we had moved not so long ago from a very busy suburb of Chicago to this old farmhouse in upstate New York, and we had room. And so we thought we'd be able to provide just a better life for these two little dogs. So they could, be just free here, run, be off leash, just be dogs. So one day, so the book is actually based on a true incident that happened here. So we were training them. They're very smart. They were about 3 months old when we got them. To be off leash, and they were learning very well, but they'd been cooped up in the house for 2 days. It had been raining a lot. So this day the sun was out, they were rearing to go. So the door, as soon as they left, the house, they took off running into the woods. They left their boy behind and just went. So in this story, they were exploring, having a grand time because they were free of supervision, until Charlie does something that lands him into some trouble. And they just manage to escape, barely manage to escape, and then they have to basically use all their senses to find their way back home.
Awesome. So. Now, I'm curious, were you aware of what a border collie is when you invited these dogs into your home?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yes. So I volunteered at the rescue for many months because I knew I wanted smart dogs because we'd never had puppies. We always adopted older dogs. And so this time I really wanted to start from scratch and train them and just, learn with them. So I volunteered at the rescue, learned about the breed, how they, watched how they treated them, how they were training those dogs. And so eventually I heard that two puppies, and they weren't related, but they were similar in age, had come into the rescue. And because I'd been there learning and volunteering, I had first dibs on the puppies. Awesome. And yes, so we were able to bring them home.
The reason I ask, and I've shared a little bit of this story in the past, when my daughter was 4, we moved from the inner city of Boston out to one of the neighborhoods. It was still within the city limits, but we're in a very suburban neighborhood, and there's a wildlife sanctuary on the other side of my property, and the neighbors, everybody had dogs. And when my daughter was 4 years old, every night we would take a walk around the neighborhood, and she would say hi to all the dogs that met along the way. She knew them all. She knew them all by name. They all knew her, and she was dying to have a puppy. And so for her 4th birthday, we decided that would be her gift. And we went to a shelter, and we're looking at all these dogs, but there was this one border collie, bigger than everybody else, just lasered in on my daughter, and she's like, I don't know which dog to pick. And I said, well, I think that one picked you. Oh. And it certainly had. And so we brought this border collie home, not knowing anything about border collies, and was amazed at its speed, at its endurance, and at its intelligence. It is an incredibly intelligent breed of dog.
Yes. And I mean, so one of the border collies, Sophie, is actually a mix with a foxhound, and you can tell the difference. So she goes with the nose, whereas Charlie would always watch. He was an expert at looking at body language, seeing what I wanted, what I was thinking, and he was like a 3-year-old boy. Well, I had all sons, so I could just, he was like a little 3-year-old boy. I mean, give him those brain toys, and he could figure it out, and so then I had to put him away and say, let Sophie have a turn. Sophie, tried, but then and meanwhile he's barking. It's like, let me in so I can show her how it's done. So yeah, we had just a whole, just fun with these dogs. But sadly, when he was just 5 years old, he started to get some problems with his eyes because he was a puppy mill dog, and he'd been bought by somebody from a pet store. They lived in an apartment, couldn't handle the puppy, and so gave him to the rescue. Mm-hmm. And we tried, we took him to all kinds of specialists, and they could not diagnose what it was. And within 4 months of the first symptoms, he was so sick, he refused to eat because everything he ate made him feel bad. So he just refused. And so we had to decide to let him go. And that was very hard for me, especially because he was my little boy. So every time we take him for walks or training, both of them, I would take pictures, make little videos. And then when I come back, I take notes just to remember, because I knew they wouldn't be puppies forever, so just to remember their antics and just the fun we had. And so I guess to work through that grief of losing him, I decided to start writing just little stories. And this incident was just so, because we have a beaver pond on our property, and every spring the migrating geese will stop there and nest. And the dogs just were fascinated. And so that comes into the story. Because I would call them back, don't go too close or whatever, but maybe they did when they were by themselves. So just the energy, the zest for life, just exploring their immediate world was something I wanted to capture in the story. And my hope is that his spirit will live on, through the pages of this book. And
what a wonderful way to remember an important member of your family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted this book to be more like it's very true to life. I know they can't see it, but so this is what Charlie and Sophie actually look like. Because I sent a lot of photographs to my illustrator, because it's kind of a memorial to him.
Sure.
Yeah, so she did a very, very good job capturing the place.
Well, let's give her an attaboy. What's your illustrator's name?
She's from Italy. Her name is Patrizia Donera.
All right, Patrizia. Good job, Patrizia.
Yeah. She did a good job.
I'm imagining that there are lots of families out there whose kids would love a dog, and certainly it was the case with us when we were living in the inner city. It's like, this really isn't. It's not the place. We're not really equipped to take care of a dog, and maybe this is a way for that family to kind of experience the joy of pet ownership.
Joy and challenges.
Joy and challenges. And that's a really good point, because again, I think it's, we joke about, and I was joking about the fact that I had no idea what a border collie was and what to expect. And fortunately I had dogs all my life, and my wife had dogs, and we are blessed to be living on in a home with a very, very big, area that the dogs can run around. In fact, my daughter's dog is over this weekend. He loves to visit with us because he has this great big giant backyard he can just run and be free in. But I think it's really important for families, and we did this talking to our daughter about the responsibilities. If we're going to have a dog, that it's not a toy. You just can't put it up on the shelf when you're done with it. You need to care for it. You need to train it. And she was such a dedicated trainer. When we go to obedience schools, the teacher would look at me and go, "Okay, you have to do this," and I'd say, "Nope, this is my daughter's dog, and I'm here and got to train her to train the dog." And they didn't like that a whole lot, but they did, and she did a great job.
So now this was a 4-year-old?
My daughter was 4, yes.
At that time?
Yes. Yeah, we expected a lot of her, and she lived up to it all the time. And we were there to support her, of course. I wasn't just, here's a dog trainer. See you later. I'm going to go. No, we were there, and it very much became a family dog. Buddy was just a great part of our family and was with us for about 13 or 14 years.
See, that's the other thing people don't realize. It's not a spur of the moment decision. It's a living being, and you're responsible for them.
Right.
And just realize, they may be with you for 14, 15 years. And that's why I think we also get so attached, because that's a big chunk of time, and our life changes and we go through all kinds of things, and they're there as part of our life. So when they just don't live that long.
Right.
So when we lose them, I think we lose that memory, that chunk of our better days, maybe, because we're not getting any younger, So that's, I think that's, and the other thing, because I was thinking, why has it hit me so hard that he died? First of all, he was young. So he had so much still left to experience and to share with us. So that hurt. But then also, I think that we open ourselves up in a very different way to a dog than to another human being. No matter how close we are, I feel that, we still have a private part. But anyway, so I tried to figure that out. Why is that grief so deep with a certain dog? I mean, if you're lucky enough, you may have a dog that you bond with in a very special way. And when that dog goes, then it's difficult. So writing about him has been difficult in that I have to constantly go look through the pictures and the videos, to make my social media posts or whatever. But it has kept him alive, because that memory is now active. Things are happening with his memory. And so that's good, I guess, in a way, when somebody dies, that if you mention him, and we've read about that, right? That you remember them, you talk about them, then that keeps them alive in your life.
One of the things we've talked about here on the podcast is that there's so many parents. Thankfully, it seems the trend is going in the opposite direction, thankfully. But for so long, there's so many parents who would bubble wrap or want to bubble wrap their kids so they don't experience any bumps or scrapes or bruises, and they never experience disappointment. And if there's one of those parents who are listening to this, I'm imagining they're sitting there thinking, this poor woman, she's still grieving over this dog. Why in the world would I ever bring a dog into my family? Because, my goodness, the dog could die and my son would be devastated and I'd be devastated. It would be a tragedy to do that. What would you say to that person?
Tragedy is just part of life, but there was so much joy. There was so much love and just excitement and connection, just like when you have a child. I mean, people, maybe some people don't want to go through they don't want to experience disappointment or fear, or, if something happens to my child. So maybe they decide they don't want children. But, people do, and things do happen. And so I would not trade that experience that I had with Charlie. Sophie's still here, because it enriched my life, just like having children. There are ups and downs, but I would not ever choose not to have my kids, because those were the best living years of my life when I was bringing them up, growing with them. Same thing with the dogs. We adopted another dog, so Sophie wouldn't be alone. You just go with it, and you focus on all that you received and all that you were able to give. So no, I would do it again in a heartbeat, because I am better person because of those experiences.
I think that's a very important conversation to have with our kids. And when you choose to love, you do make yourself vulnerable. And most relationships end with somebody being sad. When someone passes or there's a breakup or whatever. But as you said, it's worth the pain, the love that you receive, the joy that you experience with that person. When the relationship ends and you have to say goodbye, it's as much as that pain hurts, it doesn't compare with all the joy and love that they brought into your life.
And you learn everything, and that's the main message of the story, is that everyone makes mistakes. They ran off without supervision, then they got into trouble, they got lost, and eventually had to kind of find their way home. But if we learn from those mistakes, then they just become stepping stones to our personal growth.
Yeah.
And that's how life is. You go out and you live, and you learn. And based on that learning, then next time, maybe you make a different decision, but that's all. I mean, life is short, so go live.
So you made the decision to become a children's author, and your debut picture book is out here, Charlie and Sophie's Great Escape. Have you gotten the children's writer's bug? Are you intending to write more books and possibly a series?
Yes, because so much has happened here with our dogs that, I have a whole series of ideas. Encounters with porcupines, and winter when Sophie went off the reservation and dragged home a dead carcass of an old coyote.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, she was so proud. And Charlie didn't go across the road, but boy, did he give me a look. It's like, do you see where she's been? You know what she's dragging over here? So we took that, we threw it away, and, to take away. Next day she went and she brought the bones, the skeleton. So, she's clanking across the road from the abandoned property because she knew. So she had brought the pelt and all that other stuff before, which was more fun. So, so there's just all kinds of adventures that will make their way into the stories, the little series.
That's wonderful. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Charlie and Sophie's Great Escape and be able to know when the next books in the series are available.
Well, so right now, this book is officially launching on Monday, the 21st of October. It will be available on Amazon under, Charlie and Sophie's Great Escape. And it's available in 3 formats. So it's ebook, hardcover, and paperback. I have a website, www.farialsbooks.com. So then there you'll see more photographs of the actual dogs, some blog posts, more information. And I have an Instagram account, Farial English. So there's ways to find me.
Wonderful. Well, we hope you'll find your way back to reading with your kids to celebrate the future editions or future chapters in the series. In the meantime, we want everybody to check out Charlie and Sophie's Great Escape. It is the debut picture book from our guest, Farial English. Farial, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Jed. I appreciate your time.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at JedlyMagic on Twitter. And of course, you are always welcome to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Jayme Branaghand. Please be sure to check out Squirrel's 4-Square Solution. And we also want to thank Farial English Charlie and Sophie's Great Escape. It is a certified great read. We think it would be a great addition to your family library. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Railing Tang. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.